Hello and welcome to our LGBT Q&A with County Board Supervisor Nathan Fletcher. My name is Fernando Lopez. I'm the Executive Director of San Diego Pride. Use they, them, their pronouns. And please welcome our County Supervisor, Nathan Fletcher.
Thank you, Fernando. Nathan Fletcher, he, him, his, and it is my honor to join with you for a few minutes today.
Thank you so much for being here. I know you are working your butt off over there at County, and we really appreciate that. Your time is very precious and valuable. So thanks for giving us the time. We've got some questions lined up for you, so we're going to go ahead and get started. The first one's super easy. How are you, Lorena, and the family doing through all of this?
Well, we're doing good. When you think about everything that is going on and everything that our communities face, we're fortunate in that both Lorena and myself, being in essential jobs, haven't had any disruptions. We haven't had the economic stress and anxiety that so many other folks are going through, and that is very real. Whether you're a small business owner or an employee in a service sector job, there's tremendous uncertainty and anxiety. And so I know that's very real. And I know that's very hard in our community. We haven't experienced that. We have had the challenges that so many families out there are facing, and that, all the kids are out of school. And so the daily kind of struggles of balancing, your work. And in all honesty, my wife has shouldered the brunt of the burden. I've had to be at the Emergency Operations Center pretty much almost every day for 70 some odd days now. And so, she's been shouldering the load of getting the kids on their Zoom call and helping with their homework and their assignments and making sure that they get some exercise. And so I think, it's been a challenge, but we've gone through it as a family, really talking about all that we're grateful for. And in this period of difficulty and challenge, how everyone really does come together in an incredible way. And so we've worked really hard to try and stress all of the positive things that we have. And then with our kids in particular, and I think this is important for everyone, is just being very open and honest about any struggles or challenges you're having. And so we talk a lot about coronavirus. We just had our second coronavirus birthday party for three of our kids, three of our five. We're going to have our third. And so just being open and honest and talking through those, but being mindful that we have a lot to be grateful for in this community.
Yes, we do. And I know that with the family and with the responsibility that you and Lorena have, that's no easy task. So thank you for your sacrifice and for your continued service to our communities.
Of course.
So the next one, just wow, congratulations. Oh my goodness, you revived the Leon L. Williams Human Relations Commission. Yeah. And we had the pleasure of being a part of that work. That was a huge feat and a heavy lift and a meaningful step towards progress. We can't thank you enough. Can you talk about why the passage was so important to you personally and what that process was like?
Well, one of the challenges, I think, when we're talking about any civil rights, human rights, human relations, is, in some part, if you look back to the original sin that was a part of the founding of our country, which was slavery, we never really addressed that. We had a war and everyone kind of bifurcated into these two worlds, and then we kind of came back together, but we never reconciled what had happened, and we never discussed in an honest way, in an open way, what had happened. And I think as we go through the changes we're going through today, whether we're talking about issues around trans, or whether we're talking about issues around race, or religion, or any of these types of things, I think it is incredibly useful to have a Human Relations Commission that has representatives from all different walks of life. There will be LGBTQ plus representation at the Human Relations Commission. There will be law enforcement representation there. There will be refugees and immigrants and folks from different faiths and backgrounds, and getting those folks together to have honest and frank and at times very difficult conversations about the challenges we face in the community. But then having those conversations not only serve as an education component, and having them, some of them being very public and very outward facing as people talk about these issues and what it means, but also having a body that can make some substantive policy recommendations to the Board of Supervisors for ways that we can go about changing the policies. I know you remember last year was the first time we ever flew the pride flag over a county building. And that is something that was long overdue. Prior to COVID, we were really embracing our kind of Shine Bright with Pride event lighting the county building and having a moment to honor and recognize. But we see the great divisions in our society. You know, we're at a point now where hate crimes have not been higher in the preceding decades. We have extremist groups at an all-time high. And even in coronavirus, we've seen the instances of folks, choosing to wear a Klan mask into the grocery store, having a covering with the Nazi swastika on it. And we saw in Poway, obviously, the synagogue shooting. And so at a time when the divisions in our country are getting so much greater, one commission is not going to erase or solve all of our divisions, but to have a focused place where these difficult conversations can be had and where the policy recommendations can come from is an important step forward. And I appreciate everyone's patience as we work to get the right configuration, and it may still not be perfect. It can still be a work in progress. But I am pleased that is brought back. Leon Williams obviously was a pioneer in our community, started it many, many, many years ago. County disbanded it. Now we're bringing it back for good.
Well, I think that's so spot on, and we really appreciate you taking those steps forward. And I think from the city of San Diego and the county of San Diego, folks sometimes get them confused or don't understand really the role that county plays and how important that is. And so developing systems of equity at the county level are so vital. And it's just been impressive to see just the change that you've been able to bring to the county board in these last couple of years. And so that's really impressive. And that, distinctly that here in San Diego, we can work together across party lines to make that a reality. You talked about the division and how we break apart or how we bring people together through that division. I think San Diego's really been a model for that, and you've done that well with the HRC now at the county level. And so obviously folks are excited about the HRC, and they want it, and as well they should be. And how can people support the HRC? Everyday folks, how can they get involved or support that meaningful work?
So two ways. One, and we'll share with you, Fernando, a link, and you can send it out to all your comments and post it for how folks can apply to be considered for an appointment to the Human Relations Commission. And we're going through that process now. And so we'll send out a link for how folks can apply. But the meetings will be open. And so even if you aren't selected for one of the limited, I think we're right around 30, 31 spots. Even if you aren't selected for that, folks can still participate in the meetings and go and voice your concerns and public comment and go be a part of the discussion and be a part of the dialogue. And a lot of what we've been trying to do really is open up county government, because you're right, it is kind of been this kind of amorphous kind of entity, not as forward facing, not as engaged. Last year we held the first ever budget forum, community budget forum, where we brought all the county folks into the community and we said, here's the budget and here's what it looks like and what would you like to see in it. We brought back and restored evening budget hearings. That was a positive one. We did a whole budget issue just around youth. Obviously our Shine Bright with Pride, trying to open it up and be more transparent. We've done it with our child and welfare strengthening body, where we work on child welfare issues. Again, large group of folks getting together with the public, getting input. We certainly do that in our office we haven't done under COVID, but our community coffees and really trying to be engaged, because at the end of the day, the county is an almost $7 billion a year entity. And it has tremendous impact, particularly in issues that I care deeply about, issues of mental health and drug treatment and healthcare, issues of equity, issues of environmental justice as the Air Pollution Control District, issues of child welfare. There are a lot of things that are very important to our community that the county has a huge role in. And so the more we can engage and the more open we can be and the more input we can get, I think the more responsive our county will be. And so that's certainly a part of the change we're trying to drive.
Absolutely. We couldn't agree more. And we're really excited that you're bringing that to our county and to our region. Thank you. So this one's, I think, an easy one, but a rough one. That, with COVID-19 shelter in place rules in effect, what's been the hardest part of it for you personally? Like, what do you miss the most?
Well, I think there's a lot that we miss. The gatherings, being able to take, the kids, we would frequently on the weekends go to the beach and take all the stuff and stay all day and have friends kind of meet. And you know, we certainly, you know, we miss that. And that's something. But again, we're very fortunate in that we have a large family. We have a large household. You know, there's a lot of folks that are there. You know, I think the hardest thing as we go through this is trying to balance the very real public health concerns from coronavirus. And we've done great as a region. We've really been a model. The governor has touted us time and again for what a great job we've done. And in some ways right now, we're a victim of our own success. We moved very early. We moved very swiftly. We had broad spread community buy-in and support. And so because of that, we didn't flatten the curve. We demolished the curve. And so now we're in this period where folks say, well, it wasn't that bad. Well, that's because of what we did. And so now we're trying to navigate through this process of coming out of this responsibly, recognizing the economic impact that's come from shutting down businesses, recognizing the isolation and impact that's come from folks being isolated, recognizing the challenges of folks. And so it's balancing out the dangers of coronavirus with the dangers of the things designed to avoid coronavirus, and figuring out how we can come out of this in a responsible way, in a way that honors the sacrifice that everyone made over the past 2.5 months, but also smooth and steady recovery. And you know, the divisions in our society are so pronounced and they're so deep. It was really only a matter of time until they kind of surfaced. And so I think one of the most challenging things moving forward is battling the misinformation, the very purposeful, very strategic. And I'm not talking about someone who says, hey, it's my liberty to go where I want to go and not wear a face covering, and that's my choice, and I don't think it's right for you to do that. That's a principled position that someone should feel free to express. But the systematic and purposeful misinformation effort that is really designed to undercut community unity. Nobody wants to get us up and running more than me, but we really have to do it in a thoughtful, methodical and responsible way, and work through these things in systems. And so that, I think, is kind of our present challenge, you know, which is managing a sense of community that we really had at the outset. And now it's fraying a little bit as we're trying to move through this together. And so just trying to get everyone to hold fast, hold strong. You know, the orders that are put in place are not out of a desire. No one enjoys telling people to wear a face covering or not to go somewhere. It really is designed to protect life and protect our economic recovery.
Yeah. Well, you all have been wonderful leaders in the region and in the state. Obviously, we've been seeing that and really appreciate that. And that's actually, you sort of answered our next question a little bit, or maybe a lot. But if you have anything else to add, this is really about that San Diego County has been at the forefront of pushing down the curve. And obviously, we've seen disparities in different communities, as you expressed. You know, some of those disparities are highlighted more in times of crisis. So first of all, we just thank you and the county for really being leaders in helping us demolish that curve and really aggressively approach the way we're tackling COVID-19 from the city, the county, like there's been to the state. You've been able to tell that there's cohesion in that messaging. So what is the most important thing? Maybe you already shared some of this. What's the most important thing that you want to share with folks about combating the virus? Or if there's anything you'd like to add there.
Well, there's two things I think are important to point out. One is that everything that we're doing now, we talked about April being a month of action, where we took action, we stayed at home, we flattened the curve, and we prepared ourselves for May. And we talked about May being a month of adapting. And so coronavirus remains throughout the community. It's still out there. And until we have a vaccine or a therapeutic treatment, we're going to have to be mindful of what we do every single day to not trigger outbreaks and second waves. And that's where we're talking about adapting our behavior. And so all of the things that we put in place, no one is completely perfect. Physical distancing, we know for something that spreads generally via droplet, is an effective tool. It is not single-handedly foolproof, but it's all about mitigating risk. Face coverings, not completely perfect. It more protects you. You may be asymptomatic but positive, and you may not know, and so it limits your ability to spread to someone else. Not foolproof, not perfect, but mitigates risk. Hand washing continues to be a reliable thing. I shared results out of a military study in boot camp where rigorous hand washing 5 times a day by the recruits lowered respiratory illness 45%. That's not just COVID, that's the flu and everything else. Again, not perfect, but it helps. Temperature checks by employees when, when they show up to work. You may have a 100-degree temperature and not know. You may feel fine, and you're not aware that your body is fighting the coronavirus infection. And so the ability, 100-degree temperature, we get you tested. If you're positive, then you get isolated. We contact trace those close around you. And so all of those things together, when we do all of them, it provides the greatest protection possible. And that is about mitigating the risk and the spread. And so those are the things that allow us to begin to change what we do, to open up more businesses, to open up more activities. And the belief is that we're kind of adapting our behavior. We also have much more rigorous and robust testing, tracing, and treatment, the T3 strategy we talked about, than we did at the outset. At the outset, we were doing a handful of tests a day, and we were telling people, if you have symptoms, assume you have it and stay home. Well, now we're pushing almost well over 4,000 tests per day, every single day, and climbing. And so we have a much greater ability to test you, say, yes, you're positive, you need to isolate. And then we talk to you about all of your close contacts. We contact them, we test them. And those are strategies to help literally wrestle this thing every day so that we can get back to our economy beginning to move, while also not overwhelming our healthcare system. And that's the goal. And if we can get through this without ever having to dial back measures, that's an important step. The other thing that I want folks to take is the eternal gratitude that I feel as a San Diegan every day when I look at organizations who are stepping up in truly heroic ways. You look at what you all at Pride are doing with meal deliveries and with resume helping and with sheltering and with everything that you are doing every single day. And then you look at how that's reflected and represented by so many other organizations. This morning I was out at Mama's Kitchen. They've almost doubled the number of meals that they're delivering, despite having challenges with how many people can be there and how they deliver them has changed. We see testing going on at the center and everything that they're doing. And so there are so many incredible organizations that are pillars of our community. And, Pride has always been about so much more than just a parade, right? I mean, it is a representation of our community, of our compassion, of our love, of our understanding, of our embrace of each other. But every day there's another entity that is stepping up to look out for one another. And at the end of the day, coronavirus is not the only thing that's contagious. A sense of community is contagious. A sense of compassion and empathy and understanding, and that notion that we do look out for one another. And those are the things that gives me hope. And the reason that we've done so good is not because we have brilliant public health orders, or not because we have elected officials. It's because we have a community that says, hey, you know what? I'm willing to sacrifice a little bit of my individual liberty. And I'm willing to sacrifice that temporarily because I know it protects someone else. And that, I think, is a great testament to San Diego.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And shout outs. I always love Cara Desert over at the center and Alberto Cortez at Mama's Kitchen doing incredible work. And yeah, the number of meal deliveries that Mama's Kitchen, every day they're hitting a new record.
700. So, yeah.
This actually next one is part of that, I think. Too, as all of our communities are fighting COVID-19, obviously everyone is enduring this pandemic. And so what would you say is the most inspirational thing you've seen come out of the LGBT community during this crisis? I think the LGBT community is used to working in boxes and used to working in closets and finding ways to find joy. So what are some of the most inspirational things you've seen come out of our community?
Well, I think, I went and delivered a meal today to someone via Mama's Kitchen. And to just see firsthand that individual who says, I don't have the ability to get to the grocery store because of my condition. I don't really have the financial resources, but to know that there's someone out there who cares about me. And that is something that when you go and you see it and you experience it, and you all see it every day at Pride. It's one of the reasons we were thrilled to step up and really support Pride with everything that you're doing, because you see that firsthand, that notion that we are our brother's keeper in terms of looking out for one another. And then to hear that the little things that happen, at Mama's Kitchen today, I saw a stack of cupcakes in containers with little birthday cards. Well, they make sure when one of their clients has a birthday that they get a birthday card and a cupcake. And that is something for someone who's, a senior who's got a health condition and is probably isolated, it is those little things like that that really mean the world. And so to watch the LGBTQ plus community step up time and again, whether it's what Pride is doing, whether it's what the center is doing when we're putting testing there to make sure there's testing and there's access, all of those things to fill in those gaps that you talked about with historic inequities in our society. And, coronavirus didn't create the inequities in our society. It does highlight them. And I think as we move forward, my hope is that we can all take the same spirit where we locked arms to tackle with food delivery and with medical care and testing and homeless services and housing and looking out for one another, that we can take that same energy to carry through to tackle some of those real inequities, whether they're economic justice issues. The recessions hit low-wage workers much harder every single time than they do higher wage workers, to tackle issues around healthcare and ensuring true universal healthcare access, issues of environmental justice. There's a Harvard study that if you live in an environmental justice community with air quality issues, you're 15% more likely to die from coronavirus. To tackle all of these types of issues, to try and build that more perfect union moving forward.
Yeah, well, I'm really glad you're bringing up those issues in that way. And we always talk about intersectionality here, and our theme this year is Together We Rise. It's all about how all of this is impacting every single one of us, and that environmental health is an LGBT issue. We're disproportionately impacted by economic justice issues, and thereby disproportionately impacted by environmental health issues, and et cetera, et cetera. And you and your team have always been longstanding supporters of the LGBT community and at the forefront of a lot of these conversations. And we can't thank you enough for your support of Pride at the center, Mama's Kitchen, and we could go on and on. But like back in 10 years ago, in 2010, we were having this conversation about the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And right. San Diego has the highest concentration of military personnel in the world. And you yourself are a veteran, you've served. And so can you talk to us about why your support for LGBT service members is so important to you, and why you took that stance so strongly early on in 2010 in opposition to Don't Ask, Don't Tell?
So many, Fernando, of our experiences are based on our own life experience in terms of the environment where we were raised and the things that we were exposed to. It's one of the reasons I love the Human Relations Commission so much, because it gets people in the room with folks they may not normally be in the room with, and you gain a different perspective and understanding. And when it came to the issue of the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, that was something I had lived through because I was a Marine, and I served in combat, and I served with Marines who I knew were members of the LGBTQ plus community. And you know what? They were outstanding Marines. They were willing to give their life for their country. They were willing to give their life for one another. And it always struck me as just this huge conflict about, as Marines, we said that we have to live by these core values of honor, courage, and commitment. But then you have a policy that says lie about who you are. Now, how do you reconcile that? And the same arguments that were made against why members of the LGBTQ plus community couldn't serve openly were the same arguments that were made about why African Americans couldn't serve openly. And it was all nonsense. It was just nonsense. And so, when that came before us, it was Senator Chris Kehoe brought that forward for a vote. And she is someone who I have the highest possible respect for. Everything that she's accomplished and done in her life was brought forward. It just seemed like a moment that it was time to take a stand. And it's hard to imagine now how indescribably controversial that was at the time. Mm-hmm. At the time, you had the Commandant of the Marine Corps, who I had served under, had been my commanding officer, saying, if you change this policy, Marines will die in combat, which I thought was utter nonsense. I just said, that's insane. That's insane. I said, I don't believe that. You had a letter from hundreds of generals and admirals retired who said this would destroy the good order and discipline of the military. And I just thought they were all wrong. And so we took a stand, and it elicited some death threats, and we definitely, it was not a period in our country where the calls were more in favor than against what we did. But I felt that it was the right thing to do, and history bore out that it was the right decision. It was about a year and a half later, the Commandant was asked, well, gosh, what happened? Where did hundreds of thousands of people leave the military and discipline broke down and everyone died? And he had to say that in the year and a half after the implementation of the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, there was not one single issue, not one disciplinary problem, not one problem. Because the reality is, as Marines, it does not matter. Your sexual orientation does not matter any more than the color of your skin. It does not matter any more than the country of your birth. It does not matter any more than your gender. And we came back later and subsequently made progress on allowing women to serve in all branches and all jobs in the military. And then we were making significant progress around the issue of trans. And then obviously Donald Trump dealt us a setback there. But they are all one issue and part of this ongoing struggle to get people to understand equality, to get people to understand access, really to get people to understand one another, and understand that even though I might not have lived that experience, I can have empathy for what it's like, and the understanding we need to do more. And so that was a really powerful moment. And it, the reaction to that was, one, a number of folks who from the community who came up and said, I just never believed that policy would change. But if a heterosexual white man, combat veteran of the Marine Corps can say it's time to change, then I believe it'll actually change. And that was encouraging. But that was more preaching to the choir. The other thing that happened was a number of folks who came up and said, I never really seemed like it made sense, but I didn't want to say it. But if you can say it and you fought in the war, then it's okay. And that's positive. That's not changing a mind, but that's empowering someone to use their own voice. And then the third thing was a number of folks who said, I was always opposed to changing the policy, but I listened to what you said. And I listened to the arguments you made. And you know what? I think I was wrong. And I think that was right. And they changed their mind. And I think as we all as a community have walked through this path of more equality and more rights, we've all had to walk down a path of saying, you know what, maybe I didn't understand that as well as I should. And I've changed. And folks like me have to go out. It really showed that there is a role to use a voice in terms of laying out, why these are needed changes and why the basic human rights and integrity have to always be respected, regardless of how difficult it may seem at the time.
Well, again, we can't thank you enough for your work there. And being an ally isn't just something that you call yourself. Being an ally is an action. It's an activity. It's something that you proactively engage in. And you are such an incredible ally in that, really changing that conversation. And that's what's important for us to remember, is having those folks who are willing to have the conversation, because it does change hearts and minds in the long term. And it means something different when it comes from an ally who can speak to a different set of people than perhaps I could. So thank you very much for that work.
And on that point, Fernando, that's a really good point, because in the lead up to that vote, I was talking to a friend of mine, who was impacted by it. And I just said, look, I'm going to vote the right way, but it's not my place to speak out. It's not. I've never been impacted by this. Who am I to get up and say, I haven't been discriminated against and this, and I have all the privilege in the world. And he literally was like, you're such a moron. He's like, you're such an idiot. He's like, your people. It's like your people, the heterosexual white men in the military, they're the ones. And maybe they'll listen to you. And so to speak out on that issue, it really, I think in some ways empowered me that I have to speak out on a lot of issues. When we talk about gender inequity in pay, and when we talk about racial disparities and inequities, there is a role to really be a true ally. Means you have to, lean into some of these issues and really advocate for the change that's needed.
Absolutely. And from well before Don't Ask, Don't Tell and your work there to all the way through the Leon L. Williams HRC. I mean, you're right there doing that. And so that's just, it's seen and it's appreciated. And so thank you. And I know you are a little shorter on time. Yeah. So I'm going to skip over one of these easy ones. Okay, another quick one and then an LGBT one. So what's the first thing personally you're going to do when you head out, when the gates are open and we can do whatever? What's the first thing you're looking forward to doing?
I'm gonna take my kids and my family to a baseball game. I love baseball and I love going to the game. There's something very social about a baseball game. You go with people you like and you talk, and seventh inning stretch, you sing and you eat, and it's something we really enjoy. We don't get to as many games with schedules and stuff. It's hard, but that's something. There's Caleb right there, my baby. So that's something I think is, and baseball is something that everyone can cheer for. It is something that it doesn't have a partisan breakdown, an ideological divide. It's just baseball, and so that's something I'm certainly looking forward to going back to.
I love that. I'm not a sports person, but I absolutely love going to Out at the Park with the Padres every year. I miss them so much. Yeah. It's one of my favorite events every year. So I'm right there with you.
Yeah.
So, obviously in-person gatherings and being canceled for the foreseeable future of any scalable size. And that means Pride as we know it is not happening this year. We're doing a whole different Pride Live. We're streaming stuff, and that's great, but this has taken an emotional toll on the LGBT community. We are so forced to find our own families in many instances, and Pride for so many represents this day when we can be ourselves and be with our found family. So what thoughts do you have for our Pride family and the larger LGBT community as we're sort of struggling with all of these changes?
Well, that's been one of the hardest things is, in periods of difficulty and uncertainty, we come together. When there's a natural disaster, when there's a human rights atrocity, when there's a fire, we literally come together and we lean on one another. We'll come together at a candlelight vigil and literally lock arms together. And so we've had to confront this difficulty without that option. And that is something that is very comforting, and that's something that's very reassuring. And so we've talked about the need not for social distancing. We want social engagement, need for physical distancing. And so I think that the best way that we do that is utilizing the technology platforms that we have. It is that ability to, the simple act of reaching out and calling someone who you may not have talked to in a while and just say, hey, how are you doing? And then they're invariably going to say, I'm fine. And then you go, no, how are you really doing? And getting them to open up and really talk. And the convening power of entities like Pride to figure out, and look, we will get through this. We will get a vaccine. We will get a therapeutic treatment. And once we hit that point, then we will begin to resume more normal activities. We're also on a pathway, I think, to allow limited gatherings. We're not quite there yet, but in the near, I think, weeks, not months, probably groups of 10, we'll be able to gather. And again, we want to do it responsibly. We want to utilize those things, but at least allowing some of that to happen. And we took some steps forward with opening up the beaches a little bit, opening up the parks a little bit, outdoor recreational activities, retail, restaurants. The state is moving around religious services, and so we're beginning to take those steps of kind of reconnecting with one another. And I think we'll be incredibly grateful for a lot of things that maybe we took for granted. And I also think that out of this, a lot of folks have had a chance to really figure out the folks in their life who matter, and really reach out to them and just tell them, hey, maybe day to day, I didn't tell you enough how much I appreciate your presence in my life, but I'm realizing in its absence now what it means to me. And simply making a few of those calls really goes a long way. And that is what is holding us together, is that connection through entities like Pride and others that can bring people together, that can give us that sense of community. And knowing that everyone out there is struggling with much of the same things. I mean, we are all having the same challenges and same difficulties. And so really continuing to lean on one another in a little bit different way until we can all gather again.
Well, I look forward to that day. And so you're telling me I can't yet bring together 350,000 people? That's what I'm hearing.
Not yet.
Okay. Well, wait.
But I think look, the progress is being made on a vaccine. And big mass gatherings are probably not going to happen until we get a vaccine or a therapeutic treatment. But it's moving incredibly swiftly, and we could have breakthroughs, at either point, and then we'll have to identify it and then mass produce it and get it out there. But I'm certainly optimistic, that we can get through this, we can weather this, and then hopefully by next year it'll be an even more festive occasion.
Oh yeah, everyone's going to come out. Hopefully, knock on wood.
Yeah.
Well, Nathan, thank you so much. Is there anything else you'd like to share? Last messages before you call it a day with us? I know you got a busy day.
Yeah, no, Fernando, I just want to thank you. I want to thank you. I want to thank Pride. You all mean so much to our community and have for so many decades, and to watch your organization step up and fill needs, and to do things you've never done them and do them in ways you've never done them. And whether we're talking about addiction services or food service or any of the types of things you're doing, that is what every day, despite the protests and the threats and kind of all the divisions, that tends to get a lot of attention. And what doesn't get as much attention is the groups every day that step up to do the right thing for one another. And so that's what keeps me motivated, and that's what keeps me going every single day, is knowing how many of you all there are out there that are doing this great work. And so I'm just thrilled to join you and to be able to be a supporter, to be an ally, to be an advocate, and to be your friend. So I really appreciate what you're doing, Fernando.
Thank you so much, Supervisor Fletcher. We love you. We appreciate you so much. You're doing us and all our marginalized communities such great work at the county. It's been a breath of fresh air seeing someone like you in that seat, you and your team, before Brandon left, when Brandon was there, and Nick Zinter and Susan Gwynn and your whole team is just really crushing it. And we couldn't be more proud of all the work that you're doing and your support of organizations like Pride, Mama's Kitchen, the Center, and our LGBT community. So thank you so much for sharing your valuable time with us today, for all the hard work that you do every single day. You have a great one, Nathan.
Thanks, Fernando. Take care, everyone.
Take care. Thank you so much for joining us today with Supervisor Nathan Fletcher and our LGBT Q&A. Remember, if you are enjoying the content that we're producing, you can become a monthly supporter of San Diego Pride at sdpride.org/donate. We're producing actually more events and more programming than we ever have before. You can find out more information about that at sdpride.org/programs or sdpride.org/events, where we not only host information about the events that we put on, but we also give you access to other events that our community is putting on. And obviously, all those events right now are held in virtual spaces and they're safe and healthy. So we just want to make sure that we're keeping on doing that. This Thursday, we do have a resume workshop building session with Indeed. And if you sign up for that, you actually get some support there where someone will help you, mentor you, coach you on how to write your resume. So look forward to that on Thursday. Next week is June already. Can you believe it? And so we're going to be meeting up with the executive directors from San Francisco Pride, which is Fred Lopez, another Lopez out there running a Pride, and then Madonna from Los Angeles Pride. And then next week, we're also going to be hosting Mayor Kevin Faulconer. So again, if you support everything that we're doing, want to keep our programs running, you can become a monthly supporter at sdpride.org/donate. I appreciate you spending your time with us this afternoon, your lunch break. And remember, together we rise. Thanks, and have a great day.